Hi, welcome to our third meeting of Reading in Recovery with Jan and Robin. We're so happy you're joining us, and we are going big time now. We are available for you to watch on YouTube. I think we have like 10 subscribers, so if you want to subscribe, go to YouTube and follow Reading in Recovery with Jan and Robin. You can watch past episodes or ones coming up. And we want to first thank our sponsor, Dogs Matter. And you might have been wondering why a group called Dogs Matter would sponsor a recovery program. Well, this nonprofit provides and promotes a safe environment for dogs of recovering addicts and alcoholics. And we're going to hear a brief message from their executive director, Stephen Knight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Knight. I'm the executive director of Dogs Matter, and this is my dog, Jade. She is the reason why I started this program. We're the only program in the United States that offer temporary fostering services for people that are going into drug and alcohol rehab and have nowhere to place their dog. I was able to do this with Jade and a friend of mine that went into rehab, and I ended up falling in love with her and seeing the need for this to happen. We're the only nonprofit in the United States that does this. And we provide, like I said, temporary fostering service, and we also provide a very important aftercare service where we stay with them for 12 months. To make sure, they don't relapse, make sure they're being healthy, make sure the dog's staying healthy. So they become part of our Dogs Matter family. And it's a huge need in this epidemic that we're experiencing right now. So we hopefully that we guys will join our mission. We're always looking for foster families that's anywhere from 3 to maybe 1 to 3 months. So it'll change your life, especially if you're in recovery. So right now, we're going to show you a video about our mission and what we do. 7 years ago, I checked into rehab, which saved my life. But after rehab, I began to see this issue of people needing treatment and not being able to get it because they had nowhere to place their dog. And this sounds weird, but this voice came to my head like, this is what you need to do. They sign ownership over to Dogs Matter when they go into drug and alcohol rehab. When they get out of rehab until they can get their dog back is a roller coaster. We put ourselves out there. But at the same time, through all the turmoil and through all the chaos and all the drama and all the heartache, the times where you can see this reunion and a family become a family again. You can see Mama. Look! Look! Oh, look at you see yourself there, and you see hope again. Oh, she's a daddy's girl. Dogs are like love, this unconditional love, and it's beautiful. There's a need for this, and that's why I do what I do.
Thank you, Stephen. Previously, we talked about how Jan and I met on the tennis court, and it started off by me saying, I just got into AA, and Jan said, I have, her own problems, and I'm one of those people that share my story with everybody. I overshare, there's no unkept secret, but Jan's a very private person, and today's episode applies more to what she was going through. So I'm going to let Jan share a little bit with you.
Yes, as Robin said, we became immediate friends. We were both going through struggles, and I had lost a child. It was 2 years old, and after going through the stages of shock and grief, I finally went into the depression, and the depression morphed itself into an eating disorder. And in that eating disorder, I lost so much weight that I started losing function of my liver and kidneys. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it today, is because talking to Brian Cuban, who has suffered through some of the same things, I understand what he's going through. And another thing, until people have been there, you just don't really understand how it affects you. You think, just go ahead and eat something. It will be okay. It's much deeper to that. And so I'm looking forward to introducing Brian, and we can talk about the eating disorder and overcoming the eating disorder. So what we're going to do, we have 2 books of Brian. So I'm going to introduce you to Brian Cuban and tell you a little bit about Brian. Brian Cuban has lived in Dallas since the early 1980s. At the time he moved to Dallas, he was a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Law and had recently earned his undergraduate degree from Penn State University. But when he landed in Dallas, in the Dallas social scene, his name started opening doors to a life of clubs and partying. His shy nature took a back seat to the pressure of putting on the right mask, pretending to be the guy who had it all together: the career, the social life, the connections. From photos, you would think that Brian was living life to the very fullest, but underneath, Brian was hurting very much, a young man struggling with body dysmorphic disorder, and fought battles with eating disorders, depression, alcoholism, and drug addiction. Brian has written 2 books about addiction and recovery. The first is Shattered Image: My Triumph Over Body Dysmorphic Disorder, and The Addicted Lawyer tells of the bar, booze, blow, and redemption. So now, recently, Brian has passed his recovery coach certification, and he's working toward his practicum hours. On the writing front, Brian is making a foray into fiction with a legal-based thriller entitled The Ambulance Chaser. He anticipates the release of this book in the next few months. And so today, we are thrilled to introduce Brian Cuban to join us. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Jan, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
It's good to see you. Robin and I laughed. I think we have known each other off and on over the years for probably the past 15 years, bumping into each other at different events. But this is the first time that we're sitting down having a, really one-on-one conversation and talking about your books.
Sure, or when I pass you or you pass me when I'm out running.
Yes, you know what, I always look forward to that. It's nice to see a friendly face when we're out. You're doing the running, I'm doing the walking or driving usually.
And I'm probably home on my couch, so you don't bump into me.
No, but we really appreciate all you've done for the community throughout the years, and you've been so visible and been out and helped so many organizations, and so we want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate what you've done.
Thank you. So as we get started today, if you don't mind, could you tell us just a little bit about your story and how all of this started, and then we will get into talking about the addiction and recovery part.
Sure. The Reader's Digest is I am in long-term recovery from bulimia, binging, and purging. Yes, guys do get eating disorders. Exercise bulimia, which is obsessive compulsive exercise for the primary purpose of offsetting calories. Cocaine addiction, and problem drinking, quote unquote, alcoholism. And I will hit 14 years in long-term recovery from all of those in April, knock on wood, but I think I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA. I'm the middle of 3 boys. A lot of people know my older brother, Mark, from the Shark Tank and the Mavs. I have a younger brother, Jeff. and we all actually live in Dallas within walking distance to each other. But a lot of my struggles arose from childhood trauma, which is not unusual. Had a very difficult relationship with my mom, and not that I blame my mother for any of this. Parents do not cause eating disorders. Parents do not cause addiction. There is a difference between cause and correlation. But there was a lot of fat shaming in my household, and I was also bullied severely at school. I was an overweight kid. I was even physically assaulted over my weight. And so there were other incidents as well. 3 failed marriages. One more, I get a free set of steak knives. A near suicide attempt, 2 trips to a psychiatric hospital. So it's been quite a journey over the years. But I am happy to smile and be in recovery talking to both of you today.
Thank you.
Thanks. You say you had body dysmorphic disorder and a problem with drugs and alcohol, and I get that. My addiction can take the form of alcohol, gambling, eating, spending, and I'm just wondering, do you think some of us are just wired that way? Do you think it's just in our DNA?
Well, what we know, and then again, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a doctor, but I read, I consider myself informed. And we know that with eating disorders, genetics plays a huge part. 50% or more percent of it is genetics. And I don't think I'm misstating any studies there. We know genetics plays a part in addiction, can play a part in addiction. Again, cause and correlation are different. So yes, genetics plays a role.
I have a question, and I think that we don't hear as much about body dysmorphic disorder. And so could you kind of explain to us what it is and give us some examples of how you feel? I know from me, I would look in the mirror and I would see an overweight person who needed to drop 25 pounds,
Sure.
But to my friends and family, I was a very normal size. Could you tell us
Sure.
how it affected you?
That is one of my problems I've had. Body dysmorphic disorder is when someone takes a small or even non-existent perceived defect, not actual defect, perceived defect, and exaggerates it in their perceived reflection in the mirror, in the store window, or wherever, in the car window reflection, to the point where it affects their ability to function, quote unquote, normally in life. For me, it meant that every time I looked in the mirror, every time I saw my reflection, the car window, my computer screen, I had this overwhelming feeling that I saw this huge fat stomach, just this huge stomach. And I say feeling because for me, it's not a visual delusion. It's an obsessive compulsive, overwhelming feeling that I have it and have to do something about it. And it can affect many people in different ways. What hasn't been mentioned is that I suffered from steroid addiction and had a very long destructive bout with anabolic steroids. And so there are a lot of destructive behaviors that correlate with body dysmorphic disorder. It affects men and women equally, about 1% and maybe as high as 2% of the population. And it is not an eating disorder. An eating disorder can correlate with it, be one of the problems with it. A lot of people get that confused.
Well, I know Jan shared with me that when she was in college, she would look at somebody who's maybe 2 or 3 sizes bigger than her and like their outfit and say, can I borrow that sometime? And they would look at her like she was crazy, because there's no way it would fit her. But in Jan's mind, they were the same size.
Well, and as you were saying, Brian, one of the things that I really remember, and it's hard to explain to people, is that when I was in bed, I felt like my stomach was a bowling ball and I could feel it, on the mattress. And there was no fat on my body whatsoever. So how did I feel like my stomach was sagging on the mattress? Did you get those same exact
feelings? In different ways. I call them body dysmorphic disorder. I call it BDD for short, for abbreviated. And those are what I have, BDD tics. As an example, there was a time when I couldn't leave the house until I tried on every pair of pants in my closet and was sure they fit and was sure that they weren't tight against my stomach. If I didn't feel a looseness against my stomach, then I would be afraid to leave the house. I would spend an hour in the shower visually trying to measure every piece of quote unquote fat I had on my sides and on my back, twisting around. So you go through all of those little things. And I know people, Jan, I get emails from people who don't leave, it affects them so badly, they don't leave the house.
Yes.
And BDD has a very high correlation with suicide as well.
Well, because one of the things I noticed is the whole OCD came into effect when I was going through this eating disorder. I also would wake up in the middle of the night and have to get up and go and straighten my closet up. Robin thinks I still do that now quite a bit, but I couldn't sleep because I needed to make sure that all of the whites were hanging together and everything was folded just right in the drawers. And so this all was happening at the same time that I was going through the BDD.
And I still want to go in and
Diagnostic manual still classifies BDD as a subset of body dysmorphic. Body dysmorphic disorder as a subset of obsessive compulsive disorder. So that makes perfect sense.
And I want to just go in Jan's pantry and mess up all her spices and everything's so organized, and it just gives me guilt feelings about my own mess at home.
And the thing about BDD that we have to keep in mind is, for me, and this is a constant, anecdotal constant that I hear, is when I would look, especially when I was in high school suffering from it and I was losing all this weight because I was restricting, no matter how much weight I lost, when I looked in the mirror, I still saw that huge stomach.
That was exactly what I was going to tell you. I would always think, okay, if I lose 5 pounds, I'm going to be so happy. This will make me happy. And I would lose that 5 pounds. Well, then it was never enough. I need to lose another 5 pounds. And as my body was wasting away and my kidneys and liver were starting to fail, and people were telling me, you look so sick, you would not be able to fight off any kind of infection if you got it. But I thought I looked fabulous. I would look at myself in the mirror and I thought, this is great. What is wrong with this? And then I lost my ability to feel hunger. Did you get to that point to where you had starved yourself so much that you would realize, I haven't eaten in 2 days because I'm just not hungry?
No, because you have to remember, I wasn't experiencing anorexia. I was experiencing bulimia. So there was a lot of binging and purging. And so on the other side, when I was using steroids, I got huge. There are pictures of everybody out there, all muscular, but no matter how big I got, I still saw that stomach.
Okay, great.
And I know when you're in the midst of your addiction, and especially BDD, as you call it, there's that facade that everything's okay and I'm just fine. And in your book, you said, we wear expensive suits we can't afford, fake diamond earrings, and pay way too much for drinks. Anything to convince ourselves we've made it big, even if we're putting it all on a credit card and share an unfurnished apartment with 3 other guys. And, I grew up in that life. I said my father would always say he spent money he didn't have to buy things he didn't need to impress people he didn't like. And when he quit drinking, he was, way in debt, had to make a financial amends to a long list of people, and it took him a long time to pay all that back. And I guess what I'm wondering is, now you seem so authentic, and what's the difference between the way you were living then and the way you're living now?
A lot of differences. I'm comfortable with who I am now. I wasn't comfortable with who I was then. I didn't know who I was then. I know who I am now. I think that would be the biggest difference. So when you don't know who you are, it becomes easy to become all these people that look like who you want to be, right?
Sure.
The perfect example is my brother Mark. He became internationally famous and very charismatic. And at the same time, I had no self-image whatsoever. I had no sense of self. So I thought to myself, well, okay, I can be Mark Cuban's brother and I can get all this adulation. It's fake adulation, but I can get all this adulation. I can get free drinks, free drugs, walk into the bars, and I can be that. But that wasn't Brian. Brian's a naturally shy and reserved person, and that's okay to be.
Yes. And you've been very clear all along that your downward spiral had nothing to do with Mark. And I wanted to give you a chance to state that. I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, none of that is Mark's fault, right? Everything I did is Mark's fault. He was living his life. I'm proud of, and I love my brother. It was my response. My sense of self is always my responsibility.
So, would you tell us, one of the things that we loved in the book is when you were telling us about when you sold your tickets to the Mavs final game. Can you share with us?
To your cocaine dealer.
I'm like, okay, yes, it was 2006, the summer of 2006. The Mavs were going to the NBA championship for the very first time. And as you might imagine, I was going to get some good seats for those games, right?
Yes.
I called up Mark. I also had the opportunity to get a couple tickets from friends. I called up Mark. Yeah, Brian, come on over. I got my tickets. I got 2 extra tickets. Did I give them to my friends? No. You're probably thinking I sold them on eBay for some astronomical amount, thinking like a lawyer, right? I didn't do that either because that would have been disrespectful to Mark, to the team, to myself. I took those 2 extra tickets and I traded them to my cocaine dealer for $1,000 in cocaine. Trading them on eBay was disrespectful, but selling them to my cocaine dealer was perfectly acceptable in my mind. But that's how the mind works in addiction.
And also, at one point, then you were feeling guilty and you were out of control and you end up flushing it down the toilet.
Sure.
And
Sure.
the addiction in me, like I'm recovering from alcoholism, and I still have trouble at a restaurant when a waiter will come and take away somebody's half glass of wine. And I'm like, there's still some in there. I still can't believe they didn't finish the wine. So I'm wondering what you were thinking after that.
Well, so my dealer shows up at my house. I was high class. He delivered. And he gives me this huge Ziploc baggie of cocaine. I give him the tickets. I go running upstairs to my home office, dump it out on the desk, this huge mountain of cocaine. I wanted to go. And but cocaine, I first used it in a bathroom in Dallas, Texas, downtown in 1987, and instantly became addicted to the feeling of self-love, which I had never experienced before at that point. I hated myself. And at that point, cocaine and alcohol took over my life, both as a lawyer. But at this point, it was just chasing a high, pain and shame. But it was never any self-awareness that I might have a problem. It was maybe I need to change dealers. Maybe I need to change from Grey Goose to Jack Daniels. And there was also paranoia. I have all this cocaine on my desk. I'm thinking the cops are going to come kick in my door. So I put the cocaine back in the Ziploc baggie. I hide it. I drive to a Home Depot where I buy electrical faceplates, a drill, and a saw. I drive back to my house, which was just off at that time Northwest Highway and Preston Road in Dallas. And I go upstairs to all the closets, the drywall, with the drill. Bzz, 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 bzz. And I cut these fake electrical outlets in the closets. And I put the cocaine in different Ziploc baggies and hide it behind all these fake electrical outlets and close it up. Bzz, 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 thinking I'm the smartest lawyer ever, like the DEA, the cops, and the drug dogs have never thought of that before.
Sure.
And so I did some more, and again, it was just pain and shame and the paranoia. I go back to the electrical outlets an hour later, take it all out again, bzz, 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 put it back in the Ziploc baggie, go to the toilet in my master bedroom and flush it down the toilet. Now $900 worth of cocaine. The next morning comes, and if I wake up and thinking I'm an idiot. I flushed all this cocaine down the toilet. Who does that, right? There's another game tonight that night. So I call up Mark again. I get 2 more tickets for my friends. I call up my drug dealer again. He comes over and he said, dude, you did all that last night? I didn't want to tell him I flushed it down the toilet like a moron. Yes, I did it all. Give me more. Okay, here you go. Back up to my home office, dump it out again, rinse, wash, repeat. Right, well, the cocaine on the nose there. And then do some more, get paranoid again, hide it again, take it out again of the fake electrical outlets, go back to the toilet for the second night in a row, drop to my knees like I'd done so many times before, either from an eating disorder or praying or hoping someone would take away the pain and shame of my addiction, and flushed it down the toilet again. They say when Dallas flushes, it ends up in Houston. So people in Houston may have had a little extra hop in their step those 2 nights. But that's the insanity of addiction,
Yes.
right?
Well,
Doing the same thing over and over the same way. and expecting a different result. But it's not insane. It's a biological brain-based process.
And I think we've all thrown away like that cake or that cookies and thought about going and digging a little of it out. But
I've done that too.
you said you don't blame your mother, but in the book, initially, you did have a lot of blame. And I'm wondering if you could share, I shared that my mother, we had 5 kids in our family, and she said my parents were both alcoholics. They were responsible for our scarring, but we were responsible for our own healing. And
I view that differently.
okay, and I want to know about what you think about the role of resentment. And you obviously have no blame, and you have to get rid of it to be free.
It took me a while to get there. Here's how I view that, Robin. My mom and I had my mom used to call me a fat pig, and some other things. And the more I learned, and the more I understood, and the more eventually my mom and I were able to have conversations, which I feel very privileged, because a lot of families don't have that. A lot of people don't have that ability. And she had a very verbally and mentally abusive relationship with her mother. I'm sure her mother had a verbally and mentally abusive relationship with my great grandmother. I come from we're Eastern European Jewish immigrants, and there was a very dysfunctional relationship around food. My mother was repeating cycles of a woman experiencing her own mental health issues in the early 70s, where we didn't talk about those things at all. A woman talking about depression or this or that could be put in an asylum. So you just weren't talking about those things. It was shameful and contagious. And as a young boy, I didn't understand those things. Of course, I was angry at my mother. That doesn't mean it was her fault. And as a teenager, yes, I was angry at my mother. That doesn't mean it was her fault. It was what it was at that time. I don't try to rewrite history. But what I can tell you is that I have forgiven my mother. She has forgiven me. And does that mean I forget what happened? No, it means I use it to help others maybe explore what they've been through.
That's
Right.
fantastic. That is so healthy, and I love that.
One of the things that you've talked about is that recovery is a life process for you. What do you mean by that?
That means every day I wake up and try to do the next right thing and be a better Brian, and that's part and parcel of what recovery looks like. So every day, I don't look over my shoulder like stereotypically, like we learn in 12-step and stuff like that. Worrying about recovery, I acknowledge that I have weaknesses, I have flaws, and those weaknesses and human flaws are always out there that could cause me a problem. And I'm always working to better understand myself and those weaknesses and in my flaws as a human. I mean, I go through anger, I make mistakes like everyone, and all of those things can be a factor in potential relapse.
Well, you also talk about being able to get by isn't confirmation that the problem isn't real. It just means the consequences are being put off until later. And, there's so many functioning alcoholics, functioning drug addicts out there. And, Jan and I have talked about parents who think their children couldn't have a drug problem. They're on the dean's list, or, they're on the A team in football and scoring all the goals. They couldn't have a problem. And I'm wondering, when you got that DWI the first time and you got it dismissed, do you think that just prolonged you getting help for your problem?
Yeah, well, let's first start again. I tend not to like revisionist recovery, right? Because it was just part of the process that got me here talking to both of you. Yes, it probably didn't. I mean, I looking back, I never thought about it as, oh, I'm going to stop, right? I stopped for a couple of weeks because I felt guilty about it. I didn't stop for a couple of weeks because I had a problem, because I thought I had a problem. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say, because if it wasn't this, it would have been that. There are so many times I got in a car drunk or high on cocaine, where I'm fortunate that I didn't kill anyone myself. And so I can go back and look at all the different moments, right? That's just one moment.
Right. And I do think God's timing is perfect. And I think all these mistakes we make on the way to getting sober and getting well are part of our journey, and that we can use those to help others like you're helping others today.
And you're right. And it's sometimes I look at friends of mine who lived basically the same life I did, and they ended up killing someone. They ended up getting busted. I have friends who've done federal time for distribution of narcotics. And the circles I run in, a lot of them have done prison time now, and some aren't alive from overdoses. And these are all routes I could have taken. So I feel very fortunate to be sitting here.
Great.
And having learned lessons and built resilience.
Can you explain to us, you were recently certified in recovery coach certification. Can you tell us about that and how you are helping people, and just give us a little background on what it's taken to be?
Sure. It's a course you can become certified in Texas to be a recovery coach. And for the most part, as a profession, people do that and they go out and they charge people to help them and stuff. I don't. I just wanted it for self-growth and just something to have. And I was doing my practicum, getting my internship hours to finish it up at a local recovery center when Homeward Bound here in Dallas, when the pandemic hit. So I'm hoping when things get back to normal, I can go back and volunteer my time to finish those hours. So I wasn't looking at it. I did it more as self-growth.
Okay.
But it sounds like, in the book, you're struggling, working for your brother, doing this, doing that. It sounds like you found your passion, and it sounds like your passion is helping other people.
And my brothers have been very supportive. Mark and Jeff did everything they could as brothers. The first time I was I went to Green Oaks Hospital was after they came in and found me in bed at the urging of a friend who I dedicated my first book to for saving my life. And I had decided to end my life by suicide. I had a .45 automatic on my nightstand, and my brothers took the weapon, cleaned up all the drugs and everything, and took me down there. And much to their chagrin, they couldn't hold me because I knew what to say under the law, so they couldn't put a hold on me. But they did what they could, and they were learning like any other family, right? You learn when you find out there's a problem.
Yes. And
families don't go in experts on addiction. You learn through trial by fire.
Well, that's one of the things I love in your books, is how close you are to your brothers, and that through, thick and thin, you have all stuck together and you've been there for each other.
And, we talk about too, I don't judge other parents now either, because you're one of 3 boys and you're the only one with this particular problem. Part of it's on us and how we perceive things. And I think it's great that y'all are.
I don't judge anyone. I have empathy for any family. I have empathy for mothers who are repeating cycles, and fathers who are repeating cycles. And you have to remember, and we should acknowledge that I went through this recovery and addiction with so much privilege. Skin color privilege, financial privilege, familial relationship, last name privilege. And that is a minute, well, addiction doesn't discriminate, recovery does, based on privilege and across the world. And so I feel very fortunate to have had resources, even if I didn't always take advantage of them, that so many people do not have, just don't.
Well, and it's hard enough to go through it with, I had 2 parents that were in AA ahead of me, and I had family support and financial means and friends, everybody, supported me that knew I was going through it. And so I can't imagine, like you, what people that have nothing or that, have no support system. And that's one reason that I like to give back, Jan, too, to like Nexus and the 24-hour club and recovery resource, some of these groups that
I love them both.
Yes.
But I mean, it's just there are people who are on the streets going through substance use disorder. There are broken homes, people trying to get sober in jail and prison, which is not the place for that to happen. The risk of relapse without resources explodes exponentially, leaving jail and prison with a substance use disorder. So again, I feel privileged, and I feel privileged that I went through this and have my family intact because I talk to people all the time, and it's destroyed their families.
Well, it sounds like you are in a great place today, and we appreciate all of the things that you do for the community. Now we want to hear about what's coming up. You have your first novel that's going to be published. Can you give us a little insight to that? Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, we'll back up. But I'm still out there on the public speaking circuit. I do it because of my last book, The Addicted Lawyer. I speak at a lot of law firms, and I speak at a lot of different recovery events and bar associations. So not so much this last year because of the pandemic, but I was very busy the year before. And I'm hoping as the vaccine comes into play and things loosen up, that will change, although I do a lot of virtual stuff. But I also decided to shift to the world of fiction, and I wrote what is a genre thriller called The Ambulance Chaser. It is about a Pittsburgh plaintiff's lawyer whose past comes back to haunt him and must go on the run to find the one person who can save his life and the life of his only son.
And how much of this did you get from you being an attorney and growing up in Pittsburgh? Do a lot of these?
When you write fiction, there's always, obviously, I've lived in Dallas for 30 years, but obviously I have a love for my hometown. I bleed black and gold, the Pirates, Steelers, and Penguins, and all that. But I think anyone who writes fiction, there is a bits and pieces of everyone. No one character is one person, at least for me, but there are bits and pieces of me, of people I've met along the way. So it's all just an amalgamation.
When does this book come out?
It'll be this year sometime.
Okay. And you mentioned you talk to a lot of law groups and nonprofits. If somebody wants to get you to speak to them, how do they contact you?
Just Brian with an I at briancuban.com.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we just can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking time to visit with us today. We appreciate the fact that you are so transparent and you do.
I'm so sorry about that.
But we appreciate all you do to help folks in our community. And thank you again. And when your book comes out, let us know so that we can help promote it and have a book signing. Hopefully by that time we'll be able to, get out and see people again, and we will be able to have an actual book signing.
Thank you so much. And I can't tell you, I love you both and everything you're doing. And it's just so wonderful what you both do for the community and to empower people to speak up and be compassionate and empathetic to each other. Thank you for what you both do.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks
Take
again
care.
for joining us. Okay. Bye-bye.
So now I want to take a moment and introduce you to Suzanne.
Suzanne.
The way it's spelled, I always want to say Suzanne.
Suzanne
Hemke, who's going to be our guest in March, on March 3rd. She wrote a book called Healing Scarred Hearts. And Suzanne, you want to come say hey?
Suzanne just happened to be with us in the studio today, and so we will let Suzanne say hello. Suzanne?
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me. This is going to be really, really great, and the topic will be something that I hope a lot of families and parents and people can benefit from. So I'm happy to do this.
And that will come out on March 3rd at 7 p.m. And once again, it will be on our YouTube station and Facebook Live. And
if you want to read Healing Scarred Hearts before then, it's a great story about addiction, loss, and finding light.
So we want to thank you again for joining us today, and we want to thank Dogs Matter for stepping up and being our sponsor. We also want to thank Taylor Stensrud with TLS. Taylor is the one who does all of our graphics for us, and actually he kind of keeps us going. He keeps us a little bit in line, and one of these days we're going to be able to get him to come on screen with us, but we thank you.
And Jason with On Air Media.
Yes, and so we want to thank On Air Media and for all of the help they have given us, especially while we are working through this. This is new to Robin and me, but we are having fun doing it, and we really appreciate all of their help.
And as we're finding out more and more, addiction problems are common. You are not alone. There are there are treatments for every addiction. And if you're looking for help or resources, you can private message Jan or I at Reading in Recovery with Jan and Robin. And you can also go to these sites that we're going to put up on the screen if you need help.
If you're looking for help with an eating disorder, there Texas Eating Disorders Association, and then of course for recovery, we have Recovery Resource Council and CARE. And a lot of this goes back to mental health issues. And of course, we have Mental Health America. And all of these, we will give their website online. Anything
Thanks
else?
so much. And we'll see you next month.
Thanks for joining us.